Hello everyone, welcome to the GeoEcologist. I'm Dr. Krishnanand, and in this video we are going to discuss the question paper of Geography for UPSC Geography Optional. So in this video we are going to talk about paper 1, where you have main questions from the conceptual aspects of geography. So watch this video till the end because we are going to discuss every question and see that how these questions needs to be attempted, and also for your delight that all our courses which are available, that is paid online classes on our website TheGeoecologist.com, are available and at discounted prices. So you can check our website TheGeoecologist.com, and this year most of our questions came from what we have taught in our courses, and students are very happy, and so I'm sharing this particular discussion video with all of you. So let's learn and understand so that we can be well prepared for the upcoming attempt. Okay, so let's start this paper 1 geography with instructions only. So 3 hours are the timing given here, and you have 250 marks of paper that you can see clearly. So you have 180 minutes if I say so. And when I teach answer writing, I always say that please time your answers. It's very important. So if you look into this, there are 8 questions here divided into 2 sections. Okay, and candidates have to attempt 5 questions in all. It means from the 8 questions you have to do 5 questions, but question number 1 and 5 are compulsory. So rest of the 3 questions that you do, you can choose. So if you observe, let's go and see section A first. So what is there in the section A? If you observe, this is 150 words answer. Now 150 words and you have 10 marks, right? So this is something coming to, for 1 mark, how many words you need to write? 15 words, right? That's how you have to be precise, right? So now look into the first question here. The first question is, explain the causes of glacial lake outburst flood. In short, we call it GLOF, right? Now, this question directly comes from the geomorphology and hazard aspect, and it is basically talking about the glacial landforms and related processes. So what you need to talk about is the process, right? How these glacial lakes are going to outburst and why is it important in today's scenario. With one example or two example of where these GLOFs have taken place, you could write this particular answer. But the most important thing is mechanism, right? The mechanism of this outbursting. Here you need to understand that there is a moraine dammed lake which keeps filling because glacier here at the source is melting fast, and then it breaches. So it is a sudden outburst which is called GLOF, right? And we already have a lot of videos on our channel as well. So if you go to our playlist of hazards and disasters, you'll see this GLOF video as well, which is available for more explanation. But this was a very good question from glacial landform and related processes. This question also has an application if you observe very carefully, because it's an applied question. You're saying causes, and you need to take care of what kind of causes are we saying, what listing of the causes have you given, right? Coming to solifluction, the word itself is solifluction. Fluction is for flow, and whenever we study solifluction, remember it's again coming under mass wasting topic. And under mass wasting, when we study in geomorphology, then it's very important we look into the area. Where is this solifluction happening? So you need to know this is part of periglacial regions, right? Solifluction, right? So freeze-thaw cycle is very important. Nivation process needs to be understood here, right? So you see first 2 questions are glacial and periglacial questions itself, right? And what is the impact here? So if solifluction is happening, what will happen? So gradually you see that the mass that you see is being balanced in such a way that from one area, the material, right, the frozen material, which is now thawing, mixes with soil and it starts to move, it starts to flow down the slope. And wherever there is a depression, it accumulates there. So periglacial cycle of erosion, it's very important that solifluction is to be taken care. Now coming to the third, that is geological and tectonic processes leading to formation of NEP. Now, if you have studied the process of folding, there is something called overturning, overturned fold, which is called NEP. And very famous examples are there in the world, in greater Himalayan region, in also French Alps and many other places where you have these particular locations you can find out. So with examples, you could describe how these overturning happens. So what is the axis of the fold? And when you keep thrusting it from one side, the axis almost goes parallel, and then gradually it breaks and moves, but it does not separate. So this is very interesting that these napes are actually the borderline between the fold and the fault. Right, so very interesting things have been asked this year. Coming to the explain the relationship between air masses and local winds. Direct question in climatology. So air mass people study, source region people study, and alongside these local winds with example you have to give. So you can see that if there is a localized air mass, you will have local winds around it, right? So you can talk about all those local winds with example that where these source regions are, where the air mass formation happens, there these particular local winds are located on the map is very important here. Coming to the next, the fundamental difference among ocean wave, current and tide is a traditional question. So you need to know ocean water movement, and we have made a revision video on YouTube channel as well, and all these things are discussed well in detail in our courses, right? And I said that all our courses are available on the website thegeoecologist.com. You can check thegeoecologist.com where everything is given including the study material. So ocean wave, current and tide are three types of ocean water movement. In one case where you have wave, it's basically wind driven energy transfer. In ocean current, you have an entire current flow, which is again the flow from colder region to hotter region and hotter region to colder region. There is a convection cycle involved. And there are areas where you have warm ocean currents and cold ocean currents. You need to give examples. And tide is basically due to gravity, right? So gravitational pull of sun, moon, and also depends on positionality. So these kind of things are there, fundamental difference. Coming to the next question number 2, where you have part A, B, and C. Now look here. How does denudation chronology, now look, direct question, denudation chronology help in understanding the sequential development of landscape and landforms? Now you observe very carefully. This word sequential directly takes you to William Morris Davis, sequential change of landforms. And when you say denudation chronology, it means what is that sequence, what is that chronology, what happens first, and then what is the subsequent process. So right from youth, mature to old, and what are the peniplenations, right? What are the plenation surfaces? That is what we need to talk in denudation chronology. You have to talk with examples from around the world and India. Then comes deep sea mining, which is very important, and this is again coming from oceanography syllabus, where you have to talk about UN clause as well, because deep sea mining is under International Seabed Authority, and you have to talk about deep sea mining in different areas of world and also Indian Ocean. Lot of important benefits because you see deep sea mining and other things are happening. So what is happening? We are getting polymetallic nodules and other things. We have discussed this in details in our courses and the videos as well. So risk associated with it. Now you are changing the pattern of the surface. So that is again, it has risk associated with it, which you have to talk about, like mining risk on the land. So is mining risk in the ocean as well, right? Coming to man and wildlife conflict, very important question from biogeography, discuss its causes, consequences, remedies. So in the light of the development that we talk about, the infrastructure development, the encroachment of the natural regions that we are talking about. So it's very important that this conflict is addressed properly. You can give some case study, you can give some example in this, and the initiatives that have been taken to actually reduce this. Coming to third question, examine the formation of atmospheric tricellular circulation. Straight away you have this Ferrel cell, Hadley cell, polar cell, tricellular model, and the logic behind this tricellular model. So you have to understand why this operates, how this operates, right? Latitudinal heat balance, circulating system, all these things. And then next part is example, its importance in making Earth a living planet. So if Earth's tropical area, which receives maximum insolation, if it did not pass it on to the other, it would be not livable at all. So very important that these particular zonations, this particular circulation helps in the sustenance of the earth itself. It makes it very important. Coming to this question number B here is UN decade on ecosystem restoration. So this is direct question that ecosystem restoration, ecosystem services in in the light of sustainability we have to talk about, because it's here socio-economic needs like food security and development. So whenever we talk about food security comes the 3A: availability, affordability, accessibility to resources, which is coming from ecosystem. So UN has declared this decade on ecosystem restoration because we need to talk about what's happening between human beings and nature, right? So this is something which is a very interesting question. How well you have attempted depends on what kind of case studies, what kind of examples you gave. Coming to the C, here it's the Himalaya is still rising, right? So what's happening? A lot of reports have been published. So if you say Himalayas are still rising, the theories behind it, the plate tectonic theory, the geosyncline theory, right, the foreland theory, all this kind of explanation needs to be done with theoretical statements. Expansion will only be theoretical in nature and describe the processes, right? You have to give sketches, examples. Coming to question number 4, ecological consequences of agricultural deforestation, where in Amazon, Congo, all these important areas of the earth, lungs of the planet, the tropical rainforest, evergreen forests are being destroyed, and there is a biodiversity concern. So always remember, species would be very important, locations would be very important, right? And the case study will, very important for your scoring here on the world map. Coming to this B, examine the distribution and balance of energy in Earth's atmosphere system. This is a very interesting question because distribution and balance of energy in Earth's atmosphere is linked to heat balance. And heat balance is also linked to heat budget of the earth. So you have to talk about this. How is it important? Why is it important? And then describe the process of formation of barrier islands. Now, if you know, these barrier islands are very important, right? So coral reef formation, barrier island, this is linked, and you have to give the various theories behind it and explain the significance, how corals are important. Coming to section B. Here, if you observe, now comes to human geography. Look here. Why did welfare approach, right? Welfare approach in human geography emerge as significant perspective in 1970s. So the first thing is that what was happening in 1970s, you need to remember, right? So what was happening? Overemphasis on quantitative techniques led geography to become very, one-sided, one way, where human aspect, right, was missing. Normative questions like values, belief, faith, worship, and so many other things that affect this real space, right, was missing. So it was a counter revolution, and welfare approach by D.M. Smith is very important, and it brought humans to the center again, and human welfare was the main thing, so that human space, right, it could be well directed towards sustainability, towards equity, equality, right, all those things that were the basis. Coming to the next question is key environmental and economic challenges linked to extraction and processing of critical minerals. Right, so you can give some example of critical minerals, where they are mined and why these are very important, and what are the environmental and economic challenges linked to it. So that is basic extraction processing. And with the world trade in picture, you can talk about it, what's happening, what's the demand, and what kind of international politics is surrounding it. So a lot of things are here. Coming to the question, pull factors. Right, remember push and pull factors in migration, very important. And this is Lee's theory, right? So push and pull internal migration often based on perceptions rather than reality. This statement-based question, and statement-based questions have to be backed by theories, by scholarship, by example and case study, and not just from India. It is paper one from the world around. So you need to look into why internally people migrate, what are the reasons behind it, and then you have to talk about mostly how it is based on perception. People think that there is always a better life at some other place, so they keep looking into it, right? And then what happens because of that? So what are those pull factors, right? For example, if you have better amenities, facilities, livable condition at certain place, so that place becomes really a attraction, and that is just a perception from what you see from the source. Right, when you go to the destination, you see there are new challenges. So this kind of explanation is very important, looking into the diaspora in the world, looking into the migration. And very importantly, when we say internal migration, it's within that particular state, right? It's between the particular locations that you are there within a particular state. So it's internal, it's not international. So remember, internal migration we are talking about. Here you say regional imbalance in question. Again, in situ, ex situ factors. That where is the in situ where you're located and where is the external factor. So what are this? So regional imbalance are the product of the location and where the person is supposed to look into, go for work. So what's happening away from the situation and what is happening at the situation. So imbalances we're talking about. There's a very interesting question from regional geography. You can talk about a lot of theories related to regional imbalance and you can explain. So there are many regional imbalance theory, and you can bring in Myrdal to Hirschman to core periphery, Friedman, and so many models you can talk about. So those will be very important. In system analysis, remember, direct question on system analysis in urban planning. And whenever you talk about system analysis, urban planning, scholars need to be putting their theories in context you have to write, and of course, limitation, that how urban systems are limited in their approach, what needs to be done, why welfare is again coming in. Now coming to question number 6, we have dichotomy and dualism, right? And how this led to methodological development in geography. So coming to perspectives in human geography, if you observe that these dichotomies and dualisms that exist, right, it's a debate, and always because of the debate, what happens? The developments keep happening in the discipline. Someone says we should do ideographic approach. Someone says we should do normative approach. Someone says we should do regional approach. Someone says nomothetic approach. So there are different approaches, there are different ways of looking into it. So these dualisms lead to development of different methodologies and thereby growth of the subject. So you have to talk about scholars, right, from Varenius to Kant, right? You have to talk about Humboldt, you have to talk about Ritter, and then further you have to talk about Hartshorne, Scheffer. You can bring in so many scholars, depends on how much you want to write and what examples you want to quote. But remember, you should give things from geography. Why is it important? Analyze the role of language and religion in delineating major cultural regions of the world. So linguistic region and religion based regions in the world that we have created. So you can talk about it, cultural regions, and you can give some example that how many cultural regions exist, who gave what kind of classification. So there are major three kinds of classification, right? This we have taught exactly the same, the question has been asked so in our classes. So it's very interesting that if my students are have attempted this examination, they would be really very happy, as I got messages from all side. Now coming to the spatial patterns and regional specialization of plantation crops across tropical and subtropical region. This is a direct question which needs some case study, world map based study. Right. So spatial patterns and regional specialization of plantation. Now, where does plantation maximize in the world, especially in tropical and subtropical? What are the various crops and what are the factors affecting it? We need to look into. Coming to oil is an important energy security. And right from 1973, OPEC formation to oil crisis to energy crisis, all these things have to be talked here, right? Now, critically evaluate. The word is critically. So, role of primate cities, right? So, Thomas Jefferson's concept of 1939 of primacy dominating urban sphere of influence. Remember, these kind of things have been directly linked to developing countries where you have some primate cities, especially for smaller countries where one city dominates. Like, say, we say Mexico City, we say Bangkok in Thailand, similar examples. So, what's happening? What kind of influence is there and what's happening? Right? Coming to global demographic landscape, again, a demographic question here, right? Rapidly aging. So, again, you have to talk about population, geography, population pyramid, and what's happening with it, what factors are there, right? You have to give examples and case study. Coming to Peru's theory of growth pole as a model of regional growth, right? It has been criticized, so you have to write why is it criticized, why growth only happens at certain poles, why polarity of growth is a problem, right? Explain with example, right? Analyze the role of demographic transition theory in explaining variations in fertility and mortality rates globally. So demographic transition theory by notice 10, when it was given, later what happens is other scholars, right? So you have Peter Haggett in 1975, 76. He gives you the fifth stage. So you can, increase your broadness in this particular answer and talk about what kind of transition we are looking into the world transition, right? And then there is this question called regional components make regional synthesis. Brian Berry's concept that we talk regional synthesis and spatial arrangement. You have to talk about regional components. What are these regional components that make regional synthesis? Right. So what are those uniquenesses of a region? What are the characteristics of the region? And in context, you can talk about that particular matrix which was created by Brian Berry to explain this particular regional synthesis. And you can talk about its application in the modern world. So I assume that these questions in paper one this year have been more or less almost 90 to 95% of these questions are coming directly from the syllabus, but it's more explanatory, it's more applied. You need good case studies, you need good example, you need good maps, and on maps you can play with maps around, diagrams around in your answer. So if you look into this particular question, I see that not much bouncers have been asked. No question is coming out of the syllabus or something beyond what's given directly in the syllabus. But again, the challenge would be to explain with unique examples, to explain in context, to explain with particular case studies in particular way. And in paper one, if you have focused more on world geography rather than simply giving examples for everything from India, I'm sure you're going to score really well. I'm happy that my students have messaged me that they are looking forward to the scores this time because they did really well. So all the best to all my students who took courses from my website, and also to all of you who watched videos and did revisions from the YouTube directly. And as I said, the courses are there on my website, thegeoecologist.com. All these recorded courses alongside the study material is given. You can utilize and make the best usage for yourself. And if you have any more query, if you have anything to ask me, if you have any query regarding the courses that I offer on the website, you can directly connect with me on the WhatsApp, and the link is given in description. The number is given in description. So all the best wishes to all the aspirants, and hope you have a great time learning, and we'll see you for another video on my channel. Take care.